The global trade landscape has once again been thrown into turmoil. This time, it is a familiar foe that has reignited the flames of protectionism, former US President Donald Trump. Having returned to the political stage after a brief hiatus, Trump has wasted no time in picking up where he left off, resurrecting his signature brand of economic nationalism. The former president, known for his America First rhetoric, has imposed a new round of tariffs on Chinese goods, sparking a tit-for-tat trade war that threatens to upend the global economy. This latest chapter in the US-China trade saga began with Trump's announcement of a 34% tariff on all Chinese imports. This move, which came as a surprise to many, marked a significant escalation of tensions between the world's two largest economies. Trump justified the tariffs as necessary to protect American jobs and industries from what he described as unfair Chinese trade practices. The tariffs, however, have been met with swift and decisive retaliation from Beijing. China, refusing to be bullied, responded with its own set of tariffs on US goods, targeting key American exports like soybeans and automobiles. This back-and-forth exchange of tariffs has raised fears of a full-blown trade war, one that could have devastating consequences for both countries and the global economy as a whole. The situation is further complicated by the potential for other countries to get drawn into the fray. Europe and Asia, both heavily reliant on trade with both the US and China, are watching the situation closely. There are growing concerns that these economic powerhouses could be forced to take sides, leading to a wider global trade war. To understand the current trade war, one must delve into the rationale behind Trump's tariff offensive. Trump, throughout his political career, has consistently espoused a protectionist economic ideology. This worldview views international trade as a zero-sum game, where one country's gain is inherently another's loss. Driven by this belief, Trump argues that China has been engaging in unfair trade practices for decades, taking advantage of the global trading system to benefit its own economy at the expense of the United States. These practices, according to Trump, include intellectual property theft, forced technology transfers, and currency manipulation. To counter what he perceives as Chinese economic aggression, Trump has resorted to tariffs as his weapon of choice. Tariffs, essentially taxes on imported goods, are designed to make foreign products more expensive, thereby making domestic goods more competitive. By imposing tariffs on Chinese goods, Trump aims to protect American industries and jobs from what he sees as unfair Chinese competition. The tariffs, however, have drawn criticism from economists and businesses alike. Critics argue that tariffs are a blunt instrument that often harm the very people they are intended to help. They point out that tariffs raise prices for consumers, hurt American businesses that rely on imported goods, and invite retaliation from trading partners, ultimately harming the overall economy. China's response to Trump's tariffs has been swift and calculated. Refusing to back down, Beijing has imposed retaliatory tariffs of its own, targeting key American exports like soybeans, automobiles, and aircraft. These tariffs are strategically aimed at sectors where the US enjoys a trade surplus with China, and where American businesses and workers are particularly vulnerable. China's message is clear: it will not be bullied by the United States and is willing to engage in a protracted trade war if necessary. Beijing argues that Trump's tariffs violate international trade rules and are based on a flawed understanding of the US-China trade relationship. China maintains that its economic success is a result of its own hard work and innovation, not unfair trade practices. The Chinese government has also been actively seeking to mitigate the impact of the trade war on its own economy. It has implemented a range of measures, including providing subsidies to domestic industries, encouraging domestic consumption, and seeking alternative markets for its exports. While these measures may cushion the blow in the short term, the long-term economic consequences of a prolonged trade war remain uncertain. The trade war between the United States and China has sent shockwaves throughout the global economy, leaving many countries caught in the crossfire. Europe and Asia, in particular, are facing difficult choices as they navigate the escalating tensions between the world's two largest economies. Both regions are heavily reliant on trade with both the US and China, and any disruption to these trade flows could have significant economic consequences. European and Asian businesses are already feeling the pinch as supply chains are disrupted, and the uncertainty surrounding the trade war is weighing on investment and business confidence. The situation is further complicated by the potential for the trade war to escalate into a wider global conflict. If Europe and Asia are forced to choose sides, it could lead to a fragmentation of the global trading system, with countries retreating into protectionist blocs. Such a scenario would be detrimental to global economic growth and prosperity. Section 5. The global economy in the crosshairs. Market impact of the trade war. The trade war between the United States and China is having a profound impact on the global economy. The interconnected nature of global trade means that the effects of the tariffs are being felt far beyond the borders of the two countries directly involved. One of the most immediate consequences of the trade war has been a sharp increase in uncertainty and volatility in global markets. Businesses are delaying investment decisions, consumers are becoming more cautious with their spending, and investors are fleeing to safe haven assets. This uncertainty is weighing on global economic growth, which is already showing signs of slowing down. The trade war is also contributing to rising inflation around the world. Tariffs on imported goods are pushing up prices for businesses and consumers alike, leading to a decline in purchasing power. This is particularly problematic for emerging markets, which are more vulnerable to inflationary pressures. Another concerning trend is the disruption of global supply chains. The tariffs are forcing businesses to rethink their sourcing strategies, leading to delays and increased costs. This disruption is particularly acute in industries that rely on complex global supply chains, such as the technology and automotive sectors. Section 6. A House divided, public opinion on the trade war. The trade war between the United States and China has divided public opinion both domestically and internationally. In the United States, views on the trade war largely fall along partisan lines, reflecting the deep political polarization that characterizes the country. Supporters of Trump's tariffs, primarily concentrated among his Republican base, argue that the tariffs are necessary to protect American jobs and industries from unfair Chinese trade practices. They believe that China has been taking advantage of the United States for too long, and that a tough stance is needed to level the playing field. Opponents of the tariffs, on the other hand, argue that the tariffs are counterproductive and will ultimately harm the American economy. They point out that tariffs are essentially a tax on American consumers and businesses, and that they will lead to higher prices, job losses, and slower economic growth. Internationally, the trade war has been met with widespread condemnation. America's allies in Europe and Asia have criticized Trump's tariffs as protectionist and counterproductive. They argue that the tariffs violate international trade rules and will undermine the global trading system. Public opinion in China, meanwhile, has hardened against the United States. Many Chinese citizens view the trade war as an attempt by the United States to contain China's rise and prevent it from becoming a global economic superpower. Section 7. Beyond tariffs, the broader US-China trade relationship. The current trade war between the United States and China is merely a symptom of a much deeper and more complex issue: the rivalry between an established superpower and a rising one. The relationship between the two countries has become increasingly competitive in recent years, as China's economic and military might has grown. The United States has long been the world's dominant economic and military power, but China's rapid rise has challenged this dominance. China is now the world's second largest economy and is projected to overtake the United States as the largest within the next decade. It is also rapidly modernizing its military, raising concerns in Washington about China's growing assertiveness in the Asia-Pacific region. The trade war is just one manifestation of this broader competition. The United States is concerned about China's growing economic clout, its theft of intellectual property, and its forced technology transfers. China, for its part, is resentful of what it sees as American attempts to contain its rise and maintain its global hegemony. The trade war has exacerbated these tensions, making it more difficult for the two countries to cooperate on other issues of mutual interest, such as climate change, nuclear proliferation, and global health security. Section 8. The Perils of Protectionism. Lessons from history. The current trade war between the United States and China offers a stark reminder of the perils of protectionism. History is replete with examples of how protectionist policies have backfired, leading to economic hardship, social unrest, and even war. One of the most infamous examples is the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930. Passed by the United States Congress in the midst of the Great Depression, the act raised tariffs on over 20,000 imported goods. The goal was to protect American jobs and industries from foreign competition, but the effect was the opposite. Other countries retaliated with their own tariffs, leading to a collapse in global trade. This in turn exacerbated the Great Depression, deepening the economic crisis and contributing to the rise of political extremism around the world. The lessons of Smoot-Hawley and other historical examples of protectionism are clear. Tariffs and other trade barriers are a blunt instrument that often harm the very people they are intended to help. They raise prices for consumers, hurt businesses that rely on imported goods, invite retaliation from trading partners, and ultimately harm the overall economy. Section 9. Conclusion. A call for dialogue and cooperation. The trade war between the United States and China is a lose-lose situation for both countries and the global economy. The tariffs are hurting businesses and consumers, disrupting global supply chains and fueling uncertainty and volatility in global markets. The only way to resolve the trade war is through dialogue and cooperation. The United States and China need to engage in constructive negotiations to address their legitimate trade concerns and find a mutually beneficial solution. This will require both sides to show flexibility and a willingness to compromise. Beyond the immediate trade issues, the United States and China need to find a way to manage their rivalry peacefully and constructively. This will require both countries to recognize each other's legitimate interests and to work together to address common challenges such as climate change, nuclear proliferation, and global health security. The world is watching. The outcome of the trade war between the United States and China will have profound implications for the future of the global economy and the rules-based international order. A failure to resolve the trade war peacefully and cooperatively could have disastrous consequences for all.